we'll be going over IRS notice CP71, which is an IRS notice that you might receive if you still owe outstanding amounts from a prior year tax return. So we'll go through this form. It looks like there's about 6 pages to it. We're going to go over a couple of things at the very top first. So in the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the notice number, the tax year, the notice date, your taxpayer ID number, and a phone number. Probably the most important part of this is the notice date, because if there's any action due, for example, in this case, paying an outstanding balance, there's usually a number of days that are associated with that. So if you ever get a notice due, usually it's 21 days from the notice date. So even if you receive this notice in, let's call it February 10th, you would still be responsible to get that bill paid by the date that's on the notice, or the number of days after the notice date. So generally speaking, that's 21 days after the notice date. If there's any other actions, and I'm kind of scrolling through here to see if there's any other actions that the IRS notice might recommend. I don't see anything here, but usually there might be something like, if you disagree, you have 60 days from the notice date to submit your disagreement in writing. All of that is based on this date right here. So pay attention to that. It's kind of important. And then the second thing I want to bring your attention to is the taxpayer name and address fields. So if you've recently relocated, if you've moved, the IRS will expect you to keep them up to date with your new address. So for most taxpayers, it's not an issue, because every year when you file your tax return, the IRS will update your record with the new tax address. But if you have moved and you don't expect to file your tax return until the following year, and there's quite a bit of time there, you should consider either calling the IRS to update your address, or filing the official change of address form, which is IRS Form 8822, or for business owners, IRS Form 8822-B. And we'll put links to both of those resources we've created on those tax forms in the show notes, as well as any other forms that are mentioned here. So let's take a closer look at this. Basically, it says that the IRS is required to send you an annual reminder explaining the amount that you still owe for a prior year tax return. So the notice date is January 30th of 2019, but this was for the 2017 tax year. And then there's the amount that you owe, there's a failure to pay penalty, and then there's interest charges on top of that. So it also says if you're already working with the IRS, if you have an installment agreement, or if the IRS has suspended any collections on your account, then you don't need to do anything. But if you want to prevent interest and penalties from adding up, then you need to pay the amount due by the due date. Otherwise, the IRS will have to recalculate the amount of interest and penalties that are outstanding. If you wanted to make that payment, you can simply cut off the bottom of this payment voucher, send a check or a money order payable to the U.S. Treasury to this address right here. You shouldn't respond to this address. And as you can see in this example, this is from the IRS office in New York. The payment would go to the IRS location in Ogden, Utah. So, keep in mind that you should, if you're going to use the payment voucher, use the address on the voucher. But make your check or money order payable to the U.S. Treasury, and then write your Social Security number, the tax year, and the form number on your payment. So basically what you need to do immediately is make payment. You can always call the 800 number to review your account with a representative. You can also go online to your IRS account to pull up your latest account information. So Generally speaking, anything that you receive a letter for, you should be able to find more detail in your IRS account. On page 3, it goes into a little bit more detail about electronic payment options, setting up a payment plan. You can set up a payment plan online, but if they're within certain thresholds, if it exceeds a certain dollar amount, then you may need to file what's known as IRS Form 20 or 9465. That's the installment agreement request. You can also submit a request for an offer in compromise. That's basically telling the IRS that you don't have the money to pay the tax bill, but you'll make an offer for a lesser amount that you can't afford to pay. And then the IRS can decide whether or not they will accept it. It sounds straightforward, but there is a fairly arduous process that the IRS will make you go through before they approve an offer in compromise. So there's links to resources on the IRS website. And then if you don't respond to the IRS, then they can keep proceeding down the collections route by filing a notice of federal tax lien. They can move to the point where they start levying or seizing assets. So just keep that in mind. Like if you blow this off, it generally doesn't get better for you. This is the section that talks about the failure to pay penalty and how they calculate it. You can call the 800 number to get a more detailed computation of the penalty if you think that there was a mistake in that. You can request an abatement of your penalties by filing what's known as IRS Form 843. That's the claim for a refund and a request for abatement. So there are a couple of reasons. One would be reasonable cause. So if you had a serious illness or injury, if there was someone close to you, like a member of your family that passed away, if you were a victim of a natural disaster, those would all be considered reasonable cause justifications that would allow the IRS to remove your penalty. The IRS also has a program known as the first time abatement. There's generally kind of a wide spectrum of penalties that the IRS can abate under that program. So if you've had an otherwise clean tax history and this is your first time incurring penalties, you can request an abatement of your penalties. And then finally, if you requested specific advice on a particular tax issue from the IRS, you requested it in writing, you gave them all the pertinent information, they gave you a response back in writing that you then used for your tax return. And if the IRS turns around and penalizes you, you can request that those penalties be removed as well. So we'll put links to IRS Form 843 in the show notes. This section talks about the interest calculation. Generally speaking, you can't request to abate interest charges. However, if you are successful in either reducing your tax liability or abating some or all of your interest or your penalties, then the IRS will go back and recalculate your tax bill based on the new balance and the new amounts of your tax and penalties. So that would be applied to your revised tax bill. And then this is the last page. So we're going to click this link right here just to see if there's any additional notes or anything like that. I think that we pretty much covered most everything. There are frequently asked questions. So like if you disagree, you can call the phone number. It does talk a little bit about the State Department program. It's called the FAST Act that generally prohibits the State Department from issuing or renewing a passport if you have a significant amount of tax debt. So there's more information on the IRS website. So you can definitely use this to navigate directly to the links that might be of use. So that's really all we have for this tax notice. And again, I'll put links in the show notes to all the resources we've created about forms and mentioned here. So if you like the articles that we produce, please consider subscribing to our newsletter. If you like our YouTube videos, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if there's any questions or comments, or if there's another topic that you'd like to see covered in an upcoming video, please hit me up in the comments section. Thank you very much and have a great day.